Spotify looks at data. You know, what people listen to and where they are in the country. And they did this one project where they specifically looked at students, college students. They looked at their listening habits, college by college, and the results weren't that surprising. 20-year-olds are 20-year-olds almost any place you go. They listen to hip-hop. I don't really care if you cry. I don't really shouldn't have a lie. Pop. Baby, I'm sorry. Baby, I'm sorry. And EDM. But then there's Brigham Young University. It's in Provo, Utah, and there the students listen to stuff like this. And that's like the top hit. That is their jam there. This track is called Brain Relaxation. It's on the album Life Noise, and the album definitely has its own style. The other tracks on Life Noise are Distant Highway, Repeat Noise, and my personal favorite, From the Tap White Noise. It's a little calming. I like water. Although I don't know who can listen to this and not want to go pee. I kind of have to go pee. But I can't because we're starting the podcast. I'm Sashir Zameda. This is United States of Music. This episode, Blood Brothers. Okay, so I found out about this crazy white noise thing, and that got me interested in Provo, Utah. And then once I looked deeper into Provo and music, I found a pretty incredible story. It's a story about two Mormon kids who grew up with a love of music and ended up giving each other the biggest gifts of their lives. BYU is a Mormon school. If you Google Mormon music, it'll sound something like this. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir, world-renowned. They've won a Grammy Award, several Emmy Awards, and a National Medal of Arts.
Look at how much the church emphasizes their choir. That's almost the most famous part of Mormonism internationally.
This is Lee.
Hello. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Hello.
Lee's a reporter from Salt Lake City, and he used to go to BYU. So we called him up to ask him some very simple questions about Mormon culture.
The big thing with Mormons, I think you'll find, is that Mormons really believe what they say they believe. They really believe it.
Lee says that music is a huge part of Mormonism, and there are no rules against listening to secular music. He offered some theories about why people at BYU listen to white noise so much.
I mean, initially I thought, well, there are a ton of parents at BYU.
Theory number one, babies. Mormons tend to marry young, and a lot of students have children.
Which is crazy, right?
Theory number two, studying.
You have all these people who are very ambitious. They have a plan. They want to go to this med school. They want to go to this business school. They want a 4.0.
And so theory number three, which is the one I find the most compelling, BYU students don't spend much time listening to music at home. Music is a form of community.
I think that in the Mormon culture, the emphasis is not like, oh, we should all be listening to music all the time. The emphasis is that music should be in your life.
Lee says that Mormons he knows grew up singing in church choir, so they all know how to harmonize.
I think that you will find that in Provo, when people sing in a group, it's remarkably good compared to probably your typical college town, that the people know how to hit a note and they know how to harmonize.
Very close to BYU's campus is a music venue called Velour. Velour is so popular with BYU students. People say they go as often as 2 or 3 times a week. One time, Josiah Johnson from the band The Head and the Heart was at Velour performing the song Rivers and Roads. And in the middle of it, he realized everyone in the room knew the lyrics and they were singing in perfect 4-part harmony. So he stopped performing, took out his phone, and just started filming the audience.
Rivers and roads, rivers and roads, rivers till I reach you.
It's a form of worship, a very important form of worship is to sing. I mean, there's a scripture that's quoted often about a song of the righteous as a prayer to God.
I always just wanted to sing.
So this is Brandon Robbins. He grew up Mormon in a small town in Washington state. This story is really about him.
Like, as soon as I could talk, I was singing Red Hot Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. I would listen to Eddie Vedder in my room and just feel so much from it. So I have 5 older brothers, and my mom would have us all sing these hymns in church. And that was the extent of of like my musical experience at that point.
When Brandon was 20 years old, he took a trip to Provo to visit his brother. One night, they went to Velour.
That night, that was all I could talk about. If you've never been in Velour, it's such an impossible thing to explain. So you first walk in, and probably the first thing you see is this huge bison on the wall. The place is absolutely ornate. Like, everything to the trim, the wallpaper, the brick on the wall, everything is so dialed in. The respect that the listeners had for the performer was something I'd never seen before. It's an all-ages venue. It's first and foremost about the music. It's not first and foremost a social gathering. And so there's just this quiet reverence there.
Brandon went back to his hometown and 2 weeks later packed his bags and moved to Provo.
My friends back home thought I was crazy. I thought I was a little crazy, but I had to be in that scene. I had to be around what I had experienced. There was something pulling me there.
What Brandon had experienced that night at Velour was so much more than a music venue. It was an environment, one that was meticulously, lovingly, idiosyncratically created by a man named Corey Fox. Corey is a legend in Provo. He's a legend because Velour is extremely popular, but also because a lot of really famous bands have come out of there. Like, I've never heard of Provo, but I've heard of Imagine Dragons. And Neon Trees.
It started with a whisper, and that was when I kissed her. And then she made my
These are bands that win Grammy Awards. They sell out huge stadiums. You can hear their songs in supermarkets. There are other great bands from Provo too, like the Aces, Seago, and the National Parks. For a city as small as Provo, that's a lot of rock stars. And people credit Corey Fox for their success.
I don't think that Neon Trees would exist without Velour. I don't think that Imagine Dragons would exist without Velour. I don't think the Aces would exist without Velour.
Corey Fox loves to nurture talent. He's probably one of the only guys in the business who looks forward to open mics. That's where he does his scouting. When Corey finds a band he likes, he gives them his full attention. He helps them promote themselves, and he offers them more and more stage time until he thinks they're ready to headline.
Corey's taken that magic that can happen in Provo, given it a very, very appropriate and very powerful stage, takes that magic and has sent it into mainstream music. Like, Imagine Dragons is probably the perfect example. They were playing shows that were electric and powerful from almost day one because of their fan base in Provo. When Imagine Dragons performs now, they're huge. They're like this arena band, right? They can fill this whole arena and just, their music is alive and powerful. And partly it's because that's how they were brought up at Velour.
Corey hyped up Imagine Dragons and told them to act like rock stars before anyone actually knew who they were outside of Provo. And that's what he does with every band he actually cares about. He gives them a stage where they can take themselves seriously and an audience that will treat them with respect. When Corey decides to take a band under his wing, it's the Provo equivalent of Dr. Dre producing your record. That's what people say anyway.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know how Corey does it, but he creates an atmosphere.
We talked to Elaine Bradley and Tyler Glenn from Neon Trees.
He has such like this sort of legend around him.
And just, I feel like his presence even commands a respect. As a band, your goal is to play at Velour, right? So when you get to play at Velour, it's like you're grateful. It's not like, oh, we're playing at Velour. It's like, oh my goodness, we're getting a chance to impress Corey. And if we impress Corey enough, he might just have us back. You know what I mean? Like, there's a real sense of like, Corey kind of like makes or breaks a band a little bit.
You're 21 and you're playing in a band and you're really excited about what you're doing, and he's helping you, and he was just so abstract and unique. He's such an artist without being a proper musician.
He's very passionate about music. He doesn't play an instrument, he doesn't sing, he doesn't want to get on stage, but he feels music so intensely.
He's like the cool hip dude is like, he knows how to wear the cool denim and the cool hats and the good turquoise. And he's also like this magic maker for bands. So it's like this immortal being in people's eyes.
People in Provo see Corey Fox as powerful and invincible. And to some extent, he is. But Corey has been keeping a secret. He's had this secret his whole life. It's something that could affect the fate of Velour and the entire music scene.
Sometimes I get emotional thinking about it because Velour, and a lot of times I'll say Velour, and mean Corey, because Corey and Velour, Corey is Velour. You know, he's the life and the soul of Velour. It's 100% an integral thing. I feel like if Velour wasn't there, then the Moth and the Flame wouldn't exist.
So this is how Brandon talks about Corey Fox now. But when Brandon first moved thousands of miles away to be closer to Velour, he hadn't even met Corey Fox yet.
It's kind of interesting with Corey. Everyone in the scene knows Corey. You're kind of aware of Corey. And so even before I had met Corey, I knew who he was.
Even though Corey's at Velour every night, he's usually hiding, watching the shows in the balcony at the back of the space in his own private nook.
He's just a mysterious, cool person. He's somebody you see and you think, that person is interesting. I want to know what they're about.
When Brandon and Corey finally met, they connected immediately. They realized that they'd both grown up Mormon in big families. Their birthdays were a few days apart, and they both loved that Mazzy Star song, Fade Into You.
With that said,
When Brandon started singing at Velour's open mic night, Corey noticed. He saw potential in Brandon and invited him to open for a bigger band. At that time, Brandon had just started the Moth and the Flame with his friend Mark Garbett.
we just started it not thinking this is going to be something that we do for a long time. It's just going to be fun.
The Moth and the Flame was just amazing. And I was just like, this band has got to step it up and do more. So I kind of set the guys aside and just said, I think you're going to be the next big band.
Corey is always on the lookout for the next big band. He thinks it's crucial to the survival of the music scene in Provo.
Kind of a unique problem we had here was it wasn't bands failing and disappearing. It was bands becoming too big and moving on and touring. And then if we want to keep this scene that's thriving and this buzz going, it's like bands have to step up in the place of the bands that are moving on. And if someone doesn't take the place, it's going to die.
Mark and I, we didn't really think much past, this is going to be fun. You know, you play keys and I play guitar and sing, and let's just make some music. Corey had the vision for us. He saw us on stage, and he saw something that could be a national touring act, and he kind of instilled that into our minds early on.
At that point, they were working on the Moth and the Flame's first album. When Corey asked them about their plan for releasing it, Brandon said that they hoped to put it on Facebook.
And Corey just kind of shook his head like, you know, just, you guys have no idea what you're doing. So
Corey helped them plan a massive album release show. Their goal was to get the whole town buzzing about it. They flyered the entire city and installed giant art installations all over Provo.
The more you're in this business, you realize it's not just about talent. It's about talent and work ethic. And the bands that succeed have both. So I try to find the ones that I can tell are a little hungry for it.
Brandon's album release show sold out. They had to add a second date, which sold out too.
Honestly, like that band, like the local scene was reinvented by that Moth and the Flame album release.
This is Kanisha. She works with Corey at Velour.
Every band tries for that release show now. Like that is what they're going for now. And like it was such a special time, and like the music was so good.
After that show, the band went on to tour nationally, and they signed a deal with Elektra Records. And Brandon, who grew up with a love of singing, started getting to sing full time. He was getting to sing as his job.
mean, there was so much that happened at that point, and after that, it was jam-packed. I mean, it was adventures.
Eventually, the Moth and the Flame left Provo and went to LA. But they still traveled back regularly because velour was important to Brandon. Every November, Brandon and Corey would have a joint birthday party there, and Brandon even proposed to his wife while performing on stage. He told her, "I want to spend my life with you." Things were going great for Brandon, but he didn't know that Corey Fox was really, really sick.
I'd say I lived the bulk of my life like super fatigued. I think that was the biggest thing. It wasn't necessarily pain, but it's just a lot of fatigue, a lot of being tired. I lived a lot of years just not feeling great. And then maybe two or 3 years ago, it just started declining pretty quickly.
Corey was diagnosed with kidney disease when he was a teenager. Doctors warned him that his kidneys would fail by the time he was 30. But Corey made it much longer than that, until his health got so bad that doctors put him on a transplant waiting list, which is like being in a long line at the DMV, but instead of waiting for your license, it's your life.
The big picture is like you don't get the kidney, you die. Like that's the reality of it all.
Doctors urged Corey not to rely on the transplant waiting list, to go out and find himself a donor. But for most of his life, Corey had pretty much kept his disease a secret.
Most of the people in my life had no idea that I was even ever had that I had kidney disease. I never told anybody really. I don't know. It's not really my thing to ask for help, especially with something like that.
I remember Corey said we need to talk about something. And then he just came out with it, he's like, I need a kidney.
That night, Corey and Brandon talked for a long time. And he just revealed so much about himself that he never told anybody. Stuff about his sickness and taking care of velour and all his worries.
I couldn't wrap my head around it. As one of his closest friends, I had no idea that he'd been dealing with kidney failure since he was 15.
After they finished talking, Brandon went home and thought about everything Corey told him. What do you do when the person who has helped you realize your dreams, the person who has influenced your life more than anyone else, when that person is in trouble? Later, Corey posted on Facebook.
This is a post I've been avoiding but can't really put off anymore. I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease when I was 16 years old. Although I've dodged the bullet for years, it finally has caught up to me, and I'm now in need of a kidney transplant. It was hard enough just to announce the failing health, but definitely way worse to have to ask. I'm being asked by my kidney team and family and friends to make it public that I'm looking for a living kidney donor. This is a request I feel incredibly uncomfortable with and not something I take lightly.
Within days, over 200 people signed up to give Corey Fox a kidney. That's 200 people who decided right away that they'd be willing to give Corey Fox a body part. Many of those people were strangers. It was so many people that the clinic had to stop taking names.
We knew it would be a big response, but honestly, we had no clue. It was like bigger than anything we could have imagined. And sadly, it wasn't just about saving Corey, it was about saving the music scene.
In the meantime, Brandon came up with a plan to raise money for Corey's medical expenses.
We know enough people, we have enough successful bands that we could throw a really cool fundraiser show, a really cool fundraiser party, do this thing, raise some funds, raise awareness.
Brandon called up Imagine Dragons and Neon Trees, and they set a date for a benefit concert. Tickets for the concert cost $300.
The money was, great and whatever. But for us, the main thing was finding a donor. Because what good is the money if Corey is not around? The doctors and what Corey had told us was that at any moment, he could need a kidney.
It turned into a really cool community thing.
Elaine Bradley from Neon Trees says the show was sold out.
Rallying around Corey and also appreciating the arts, which is really fitting. Because, that sums up Corey. His concern has always been with the music scene. here. So it's neat that the music scene was able to like rally around him like he does us in the beginning.
Sing it if you know it. What are you waiting for? Say goodbye to my heart tonight.
After the benefit concert, Corey spent months just waiting. The hospital was taking a long time to find him a donor match. Ironically, the fact that so many people signed up actually slowed the process down. Corey and Kenesha worried about velour.
It's like, it's not even just like if Corey's not feeling well right now, you know, before a transplant comes, like that's hard enough. But like, what happens when you do have a transplant and you can't work for 6 months? And, you know, this place that's bigger than either of us, like, will velour survive this?
Finally, in September 2016, the hospital found a match for Corey, who was a friend from high school. Everybody was relieved, and they set a date for the transplant. But just a few weeks before the surgery, the doctors re-examined Corey's friend and realized it would be dangerous for him to go through with it. So Corey had to find a new donor. Even with a long list of volunteers, the process could take another several months that Corey probably didn't have.
It was heavy and it was frustrating because for one thing, there's this huge positivity in this scene, you know, all this love from this whole community, and you feel like, oh, this is going to be okay. And just with technicalities of the healthcare industry, like, it wasn't okay.
I could see Corey had so much on his shoulders. I could sense it at that point. I remember feeling a little scared in my stomach, like the nerves of when you know you're going to do something. I had those nerves for a split second. Like that instant, I was like, all right, I'm going to find out if I'm a match, and I'm going to push through this thing really quick, because at that point, it was September of 2016. You know, he knew he needed a kidney by at least October or November. Time was running out.
When the hospital had made their list of possible donors for Corey, Brandon missed his chance. They stopped taking names before Brandon could sign up.
He wasn't on that list. He just called them again and basically insisted he be on this list that he didn't get on.
Something needed to be done by someone, and I just thought, you know, why not me?
And he was on the road a lot too during those months, and
Yeah,
he
sounds
started getting
crazy.
tested. He just went through the testing process. Like whenever he came through Utah, he was working at that clinic. He would do things long distance. He would do it, you know, on the road at certain clinics.
I got a call one day and they basically said, hey, we found a perfect match, but they wouldn't tell me who it was.
The way they broke the news to me, they said it was either a near perfect or perfect match. It was like an ideal match. I mean, it was 100% just a gift from God. I was ecstatic. I like couldn't sit still. I wanted to just go on a run and just, you know, shout from the mountaintops. I don't know, you know, it was one of those like movie moments. I was so excited. I was so happy. I immediately called my wife and told her the news, and she was at the grocery store in the cereal aisle, I think, and she just started bawling. And she said, you know, everyone was looking at her like she was a crazy person.
Brandon flew to Provo right away.
It was one of those rare moments where Corey had a hard time controlling his emotions, his facial expressions. You know, Corey is the kind of person that doesn't want to put any burdens on his friends or anyone else. And so there was a mixture of bittersweet to it, because he knew that I would be sacrificing.
Weird thing is, before you do the surgery, I mean, they make you basically make a will. Like, they force you to. So, I mean, you're kind of forced to think about mortality. It was like the weight of mortality was definitely on me over several months.
Kanisa says that it seems almost destined that Brandon is Corey's match. Before Brandon ever moved to Provo, before Corey ever opened Velour, Brandon went to Utah with his family. He was like 9 or 10 years old, and he had never been to a concert. His older brothers took him to see a show at this place called Rhapsody. And at the time, the person working at the door checking the tickets was 20-year-old Corey Fox. Corey was very likely the person that gave Brandon his first concert ticket ever. On the morning of the surgery, everyone gathered together in the hospital waiting room.
The mood was kind of cheery, almost, surprisingly. It was fun. We were making jokes and just, having a good time. They had me get up onto a bed that they would, from there, wheel me up to the operating room. We said our goodbyes at that point. There's no family beyond this point kind of thing. As I'm wheeling away, Haley, begins to cry. And I could see that, this was going to be harder for my family members than it was going to be for me. It was the first time that I was like, oh, this is difficult. I never had that moment yet. It just hits you in a different way once you're in that bed.
The nurses wheeled Corey and Brandon into separate rooms, and they both went under. It's weird, but when surgeons perform a kidney transplant, they don't actually remove the failing kidneys from the patient. They just move things around and make a little extra space for a third kidney. A third kidney. The transplant took about 5 hours. When they brought Brandon out of it, something was wrong.
I was still really out of it, but there was a panic in the room, and I could feel that.
Brandon's heart rate dropped.
I could hear family members crying, and I was confused, but I knew I was throwing up and in pain. But they were able to take care of the situation.
Brandon came out of surgery and he was like so small and green and like he just lost an organ. Corey comes out of surgery and I was like, why do you look so good? Like he just had like an 8-hour surgery and he's like full color, like cracking like wisecrack jokes, like making band name puns, like not drug induced, just like normal Corey stuff. But I was like, why do you look so good? And it's like, well, a new kidney, I guess, would do that to you.
Even though Brandon's recovery was harder at first, it was also much quicker. Within a couple weeks, Brandon was back on his feet again. He went to visit Corey, who was still recovering.
And I wish I could say that I remember something significant that was, some story, but, it was really just us hanging out, me sitting in a chair next to his bed and just us talking like we always did, and I guess that in and of itself is kind of a moment. It's just he's still here, and so it was great. I mean, it was nice.
After the surgery, it wasn't just Brandon who got his friend back. The entire community got Corey back, and Velour.
I mean, now seeing Corey Fox at the Velour is a very different experience than seeing him before.
A few months after the transplant, Lee Hale went to a concert at Velour.
He was the same old Corey, like kind of aloof, kind of sticking in the back, watching over. But I just had the moment where I thought like, wow, I mean, I'm really glad to see him here. I'm not going to approach him because you just don't do that. I'm not going to go talk to him. He's not inviting somebody to come have a conversation with him necessarily.
The act that night was Joshua James. Lee describes the concert as quintessential Velour.
There was really kind of low lighting and it was acoustic and it was just very tastefully decorated and like the perfect concert experience, right? Just like the crowd and the musician were just in sync. And then noticing Corey in the back and just feeling grateful that like, I still get to experience this, Had that surgery not been successful, I don't think that we would have been in that room with that lighting and those people. So obviously, I'm sure that experience felt a little different to him too, because who knows if he expected to be back there.
It's almost like a dream sometimes. There's a sense of purpose and an added dimension to the way I see life and to the way I feel about myself and the way I feel about Corey.
We joke a lot about I don't like sweets. Like I'm a savory guy, like a bag of chips over a bag of candy, you know. Brandon's has a total sweet tooth. I went to a barbecue thing at his family's house before the surgery. Like he like had a package of like the golden Oreos that just come out or something. He's like, oh man, I'm so addicted to these things. He's like, dude, you need to try one of these. And I tried it. It's like, oh, vanilla Oreo, cool, you know. And then the funny thing is, like, after the surgery, I was here at Velour one night, and we sell, you know, little concessions, and one of the things we have is these mini packages of different cookies, and I hadn't eaten, so I just like grabbed this package of those, and I'm like, man, these things taste amazing. Since that time, like I've maybe eaten like a package of, I shouldn't say this when I'm supposed to be healthy. I've probably eaten a package a week of those things. Probably has nothing to do with that, but we like to make the joke that it's because of Brandon's kidney that he somehow gave me his sweet tooth.
It's now been 1 year since the surgery. Corey's health has progressively gotten better, and Brandon says he's totally back to normal. This is obviously a relationship of giving. Corey gave Brandon advice and stage time in the beginning of his career, and Brandon gave Corey a kidney. When we first asked Corey to do this interview, he was hesitant. But according to Kanisha, he finally agreed to talk to us, in part because he thought the publicity would be good for Brandon's career. Classic Corey. The cycle of giving continues. United States of Music is hosted by me, Sashir Zameda. Here are my own white noise tracks. This is a tea bag going in water. This is dragon yawning. This episode was written and produced by Sharon Mashihi with the help of John Earl and Gabby Cortez. Our executive producers are Greta Cohn, Brandon Getchis, and Dossie McCraw. This episode was mixed by Ben Shano. Our show is a production of Spodify and Transmitter Media. Special thanks to Kanisha Johnson, Lee Hale, Deb Glenn, Scott Wiley, Sean Haskins, and the Spodify Data Insights team.